to infinity and beyond.
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No, I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. Zach Goins here with the one and only Spice Lord himself, the Muad'Dib, the Kwisatz Haderach, Johnny Sobchak. He is here. How are you, Johnny? It's Dune has arrived. You've seen it. It's Dune podcast week. What's going on?
Oh, what a time to be alive, Zachariah. It is a fun, eventful, memorable last few days with Dune finally coming out in the US and many other countries around the world. Super exciting. Lots of great reactions, lots of positive response. Overperforming at the box office as it has been everywhere else so far. And I have seen it 3 times now in IMAX in theaters, and I am going to be leaving as soon as we finish this episode to go see it for a 4th time. So I am loving it. We'll be talking more about that later. I also wrote a full review for the website that has been up there since Friday that everyone can go check out and read if they want a written review. But yeah, it's been very fun, very exciting. And the crazy thing is that that's not even the only thing that's been going on the last few days. There's a lot of other exciting things that we've been up to and talking about. So big episode.
Johnny Sobchak is thriving right now, folks. I love it. I love it. So like Johnny said, big episode. We are talking, obviously, we're reviewing Dune. That's going to be the main course here. But as always, we've got some news we're going to talk about, everything from last week, a couple exciting and less exciting trailers, some fun casting news as well. And we're going to talk Succession. We're recording on a Monday again, so that means Succession episode 2 has dropped. We're going to continue discussing season 3 of that show. And at the end, we're going to wrap things up with recapping Film Fest 919. That's what Johnny was alluding to as something exciting this past week. He got to check out one film. I saw quite a few. So we'll be not delivering full reviews of that. We'll kind of sprinkle those out throughout the coming months as those movies hit theaters, but we'll touch on everything that we saw and, whet your appetites for what's to come. But before that, I ask what's going on. That's what's been going on for me. Tuesday through Sunday, I was in a movie theater every single day. 6 of those were for Film Fest 919. And then the other was for, of course, the big thing, Dune. I've only seen it once in theaters, so not quite as caught up as you, Johnny. I started to watch it on HBO Max, but that's another story. I don't want to put anyone in particular who may or may not reside with me on blast on a podcast episode. But that's what's going on. Anything besides Dune and Film Fest 919 going on with you, Johnny?
No, those have been the highlights, and then of course,
that's been a lot of stuff going on just in those 2. So I wouldn't expect there to be an extensive list of other things for you.
No, that's 4 visits to the movie theater in the last 5 days or something like that, 4 days. So yeah, no, it's been busy. And then of course, Succession season 3, episode 2 was last night to kind of cap off the weekend. And that was also fantastic. So no, between all those movies and writing the review and keeping up with everyone on Twitter and whatnot, I've been pretty busy.
Oh, and I will say, highlight more so than Dune, more so than Film Fest 919 was Johnny and I seeing each other in the flesh for the first time in about 2 years. We had an extensive, about a 6-minute visit in between movies. He was briefly making an appearance at Film Fest 919, and we crossed paths for a quick chat before we entered into our separate theaters, and then he was on his way to another Dune screening. So unfortunately, it wasn't much time to get to, catch up and spend some time together. But at least we got to remember that it's not just like a robot voice on the other side of the microphone here, but that we are in fact real people and real podcast co-hosts. So as always, great to see you in the flesh, Johnny.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Appreciate that. And of course, I wouldn't have been there at all if it weren't for you and the site and getting us credentialed and everything. So it was nice to have a mini reunion. I wish I could have the weekend, just the way it fell together between Dune and my own work, personal work and everything, just was not convenient for me to be there all weekend or multiple days to see more than just the one film that I did see. So that was a bit of a bummer, but they had a great program, and it seems like you got to see some great stuff too. So it's funny you mentioned that there's an actual human on the other side of this. I ordered pizza for Reagan and I last night for Succession. We were eating dinner, and it answered, and I had a full conversation and placed an entire order, all my information, everything, and never once talked to a human. It was like an automated voice computer. Like I had never experienced that before. It was very, I don't think strange.
Well, first of all, what psychopath calls to order pizza now? Don't you just do it like online or on an app or something? But I guess they're trying to cut down on people answering the phones.
They must be. Yeah. I mean, I never typically order pizza. Like I'll usually just go pick it up, and order it in person or something. But yeah, I did in fact call. It was a last minute thing. So, but yeah, it was very weird. I don't know if anyone else has had that experience. I'm sure it's getting more and more common, but
it's I'm glad we're still that's how they're combating. I don't know if you've ever seen the videos where it's like one person calls Papa John's and the other one calls Domino's and puts them on speaker, and they have like both of them answer, and those people end up having a conversation. It sounds like that's happened one too many times, and they're like, fuck it, we're doing robots now.
No, literally, I called Papa John's first, and they were like, yeah, no, our wait is like 2 hours. Like everyone called at once. And he's like, I'm sorry, man. And then I was like, okay. And then I just went ahead and called Domino's, and a non-person took care of me. So, hey, I don't know what that says about humanity, but and I'm glad that we're living, breathing people here for the enjoyment of others.
Agreed. Well, let's stop chitter chatting here and instead get ready. We got to get through Succession, get through news, so we can get to what you and I imagine most of the listeners want to hear, and that's the Dune review. So let's talk about last night's episode of Succession, second episode of season 3. After the big explosive return in episode 1, we've starting to put the pieces together a little bit more as it's not just immediate fallout, but now battle stations, as Logan said, to end episode 1. So I want to go through, I've got a couple key moments here, big things that happened in the episode that I want to talk about. Obviously, the first and biggest thing that went down in this episode was the coincidental reunion of all of the Roy children. We've got Kendall set up in his ex-wife's apartment, and so Shiv comes to go and sneakily meet him and discuss potential plans. And at the same time, Roman's doing the same thing. And then Connor shows up at Kendall's request. But this secret summit discussing Kendall giving his pitch to have them help overthrow their father. No one ends up jumping ship. You can tell that they're all thinking about it. But once one of them says no, it's just a snowball avalanche that they're all going to say no because they're scared of being the only one to do so. So what were your big takeaways here? What did you think about this? I mean, this was just the dynamics between all the characters, seeing them all kind of almost take the bait, but then also seeing the quick barbs back and forth, the insults that only the Roy family can hurl at each other. I just love seeing them all together for the first time in a while since their Mediterranean boat ride.
Yeah, no, I think this I honestly think this is one of the best episodes in the whole series so far. I thought that this was extremely well written. I thought it was extremely well acted as usual. But it very much highlighted the dynamics between the siblings, and they are the heart of the show in most ways. As you mentioned, it was fun how it was kind of a coincidental thing. They all just so happened to be there, for whatever reason, whether it was Kendall related.
And well, we all knew the real reason that they were there. It was to hear Kendall out, but they all had some sort of like, there was some like guise of like what they're actually like, oh, I'm just here to try and talk you down. And then Roman's just here to keep an eye on Shiv, and then Connor's just kind of there, which is always the case with Connor.
Exactly. So it was very much highlighting each of their personalities and how they engage with others, how they engage with each other specifically. Kendall, really, I'm not sure what to make of him at this point. He has begun to grow on me a little bit more. As we all know, these characters are not good people at the end of the day. By and large, they do a lot of terrible things to their loved ones, to their partners, to their friends. Like it's a lot of kind of backstabbing and a lack of loyalty in a lot of instances. There's like a lack of love, it seems like, in a lot of instances. So to see them all together, and it felt like we were so close to something good happening, and potentially, even though maybe you don't like one of these characters, or maybe you don't like any of them, to see them potentially come together and, as Kendall was saying, kind of wash their hands, eliminate the culture that their father has created in the company to try to rebuild something better. Like that is, I mean, it's an aspirational thing, and it's something that is like admirable. Could they really have done it if they all agreed to? Who knows? But the idea of it was exciting, and to see them all kind of bantering back and forth, hearing their different perspectives on it. At the end of the day, I felt. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that the best part of it too is that rarely do we see them all four children together alone. This felt like I know we call them children because they're like the Roy kids, but they're all full grown adults. But seeing them in the setting was a child's bedroom. They felt like children. It's like unsupervised Roy family, like throwing zingers at each other, talking for the first time, like talking bluntly and laying it out there, versus like, it's not like Logan's watching, or they have to be careful because like Marsha there's not like anybody from the outside. It's just the siblings, like for the most part, like semi keeping it real. And that's, you so rarely, when they're all like putting on this front and like playing so strategically with others there, we so rarely actually like get to see that between them. So I really love seeing that. And I like, just now talking about it, I realized like the setting, I mean, they're in the apartment and there's not tons of people there, so they're limited in where they can go to talk. But I don't think it was a coincidence that it was like a children's bedroom to like revert them back to like their childhood characters.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great point as far as like the mise en scène of this episode. I mean, yeah, going to that child, bedroom absolutely kind of hammered that home. And just the way that they bantered with each other or interacted with each other in the room in this episode overall felt like they were kids again, like felt like that, when we haven't seen them as kids in the show, obviously, but you get an idea of what that might have been like. And, Connor, Kendall, or Shiv upsetting Roman, and then Roman running out of the room, and then Connor, offering to go and get him back. And you feel those distinct personalities, I think, here more, because sometimes it's easy for it to become kind of homogenized, because, well, this is a bad person and this is a bad person, and they cheat and they steal and all this. So this, I think, allowed for a little bit more of like a diversification, and like highlighted those contrasts between each other a lot more than maybe we usually see, or maybe have forgotten just because it's been a while since we've been in a position like this with all of them together. The thing I was talking about, how it really seemed like they might come together, it was interesting because in the back of my head, I'm thinking, well, Kendall really only needs Shiv to do this. I thought all along, I'm thinking, well, maybe Connor falls through, maybe Roman falls through, like, what could happen with that? But Shiv, if she really thinks like she could go with this, I think that they go ahead and it'll be fine, and they could make a formidable like team together. But ultimately, this donut, this delivery of donuts arrives, and it's from Logan, and like 5 seconds later, the entire thing just unravels. And to me, I don't know, I was drinking a lot of champagne while I was watching this, so I don't know if this had anything to do with it, but that scene with the donuts was like the funniest scene in the whole show so far to me. Like I was laughing so hard at their reactions and like the banter. And I think the line where he says, you think that dad would send poison donuts to the house of his grandchildren or something like that. I just thought that was really funny. And then of course the way it just goes completely off the rails very shortly after, and Kendall's hurling insults at everyone. And then
Connor's the first one to back out, and then it's immediately, fuck you, you're irrelevant, you don't matter, like get out. Like,
yeah,
I mean, accurate, but also like the way he just immediately, like he was sweet talking to him so much, and then it just shows that like you said, the only real one he needs is Shiv.
Yeah, no doubt. And the other element to this episode that we haven't really there's a couple elements we haven't mentioned yet, but there's the fact that Stewie and Sandy are still very much in play, and Kendall is interacting with them, talking to them about a potential deal. And then also back with Logan, we have Marcia, she's re-entering the fold as well. These are all characters that we had not seen in the first episode, and so they're kind of coming back. There's the whole point with Marcia, it's like a PR play to make Logan more likable, to make it seem like things are stable, to make it seem like he's his old self, like he's not bothered by this. So, and she is putting up a huge battle as well. She seems like she's going to be making a lot of claims, and she's really putting her foot down. Who knows what that's going to lead to? I don't know if that's going to be good for Logan in the long run. I don't know if it's going to go completely south. It's hard to say. And then of course there's also the cousin Greg element to this, where he's freaking out. That was kind of like almost like a B plot to this. Like he is trying to get, Logan's offering him a lawyer and Kendall's offering him a lawyer, and then he goes running to his grandpa and he's asking for him to get him a lawyer. And that's all
the scene at Greg's apartment where he's got a first semester law student over there to consult with him about this like earth-shattering situation was absolutely hysterical. Like that's the most cousin Greg thing ever to do. Like I have all these resources coming after me, but I'm going to ask someone who's still working on their first semester. And then the guy knocks on the door and he's like, oh yeah, I'm your lawyer. And he's like being super shady. Like you can tell that's a trap. Like, but it's just such a peak cousin Greg performance right there. And then of course, like you said, Ewan comes in, takes charge, and it's this like bum lawyer who's like talking about like taking down capitalism and stuff. And like, cousin Greg is like, this is not what I wanted here, but like Ewan's kind of taken over here and I don't think I have a say anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's another character who came back in. So it's very much feeling like typical Succession, fully into the swing of things now and kind of shifting gears. These first couple episodes feel like they were setting the stage for season 2. It's kind of like the bridge between, or season 3 rather, kind of the bridge between season 2 and this new season. Now we all know there's no question about, I mean, there's of course a lot of questions about where this is all going or where it's going to end up. But for now, the state of play with Kendall, his alliance situation that he was trying to build, that's not going to happen. Roman has fallen back. Connor's fallen back. Shiv's fallen back to Logan, who is now offering her this made up position as president, I guess, of the company. And that's where we are now. Everyone's kind of set their lines, and now that's how it's going to roll forward. Right. And I really, again, who knows where this is going to go. I'm very excited. Of course, we know Skarsgård is on the way. Alexander Skarsgård's character should be popping up, I imagine, pretty soon. And then Adrian Brody is also going to be showing up as well. So I'm curious to see how those factor in, whether they're going to be kind of on Kendall's side, if that they're going to be a factor with him, or maybe with Shiv and whoever else.
Agreed. And I want to go back to what you mentioned really quick about the proposition at the end where Logan's telling Shiv that she's going to be the new president. It means whatever you want it to mean. And she's like, okay, well, that means it's just like BS. It's just a title. And basically he tells her, the quote is, "My eyes and ears, Shiv, and the heart of everything through this shitstorm, but wearing a full chemical and biological suit going by the name of Jerry Kellman." So I was kind of confused first off by like what this meant. Did this mean that like Jerry is Logan's shield and she's going to take the blame? Or did this mean that Shiv was going to like this position was so that Shiv could keep an eye on Jerry because Logan didn't trust her. After listening to, I don't know if you've tuned in, but they have, HBO has like an official Succession podcast that comes out after each episode. And obviously there've only been 2 so far, but it's been very cool. The first time they had like the former director of communications from the Obama White House. And they were like talking about Jerry's call to the comms person and asking about like the president. And it's basically like, in the real world, if this happened, how would you handle it? So that was super insightful this week. It was about, it was like conflict management, like kind of like talking about like how the family, like, is the family repairable from like a psychological standpoint? Like how would you like address this like within a company to try and like put it back together? But anyway, they opened off the episode by recapping everything. And in that they specified that Shiv was being tasked with keeping an eye on Jerry. So I think, going back to what I was saying of the 2 options, I think it was the latter, that Logan doesn't trust Jerry, even though he's just given her this title of interim CEO. So they've always been like hand in hand, and obviously Jerry and Roman are close. So if there's mistrust there, I think that could also open up an interesting new avenue for the future episodes here.
Yeah, no, absolutely good. Good and interesting commentary. You know, this is many episodes ahead, so I'm excited. I'm just really excited. And again, I do think this is one of the best episodes in, you know, pretty much every department. I was really on the edge of my seat, and I didn't know exactly how it was going to play out. Predictably, it all fell through. They're at each other's throats still, but I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see. I have literally no idea how the season's going to end. Like, and it's not like something like Game of Thrones where, I mean, these people,
right, you're not like theorizing,
kill each other. I mean, they can literally kill each other and erase each other from the series. Whereas with you know, this show, that's not the case. I mean, someone might go to jail, I guess, or something like that, but you know, I don't really anticipate that happening necessarily.
Yeah, and I thought you were going another direction there, but it's not like Game of Thrones where like I'm not on the Reddit boards trying to come up with a theory as to what's going to happen. Like I'm not trying to predict anything. I'm just going along for the ride because it's so engaging what they come up with. And this isn't one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, they're setting up this is going to happen here. And I don't know, I'm just happy to be here. So I'm not going to make any bold predictions as to what I think is going to happen. But any final thoughts on Succession before we get into the news for the week?
No, just I loved it. Nothing but good things to say, really, and I'm excited for next week.
Exactly, something to continue to look forward to. I love having that back. So, transitioning here into news of the week, we got some trailers last week. First one that I want to talk about is Uncharted. We got the first look at the video game adaptation starring Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg. Johnny and I believe, both love these video games, correct? Big fans?
Yes.
Okay, great. Glad we're on the same page there. I
played all of them?
I played 1 through 3, and then by the time that 4 came out, I was like deep into college, and I was like, I don't really have time to like sit down and play video games, unfortunately, anymore. So I never played the 4th one, but I have plenty of understanding of Nathan Drake, of the character, of the world, and everything.
Okay.
So this obviously is a different take on that. It's sort of a prequel. We're seeing young Nathan Drake played by Tom Holland, young Sully played questionably by Mark Wahlberg. What did you think of this trailer? It's the first real look that we've gotten at this movie.
I think it looks really not good. I'm not going to like totally just sit here and slander it for the next 5 minutes, but I was not impressed with this at all. And to be quite honest, I had been someone who was actually optimistic, or like cautiously optimistic about the potential for this movie, even though people had been critical of the casting decisions and, you know, skeptical of the director they ended up choosing because it had shifted through so many different hands at this point. I love the game so much. And, you know, of course, they're very cinematic and lend themselves to this kind of movie. And I like Tom Holland. I think he's a great performer. And I thought that he fit the kind of mold of a young Nathan Drake. Mark Wahlberg, I was certainly less happy about, but I thought, hey, maybe it won't be that bad. You slap a mustache on him, hand him a cigar, have him talk a little bit differently. Not, you know,
no mustache.
I can buy that as,
no mustache, I said.
Oh yeah, no mustache at all. And I thought, okay, I can make that work as like again a younger, Sully. Um, but no, it's Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg just playing themselves. Nothing different here. Nothing in the way of disappearing into the role. Nothing in the way of having any sort of differentiated charisma from their typical selves, or from maybe roles like Peter Parker, or anything else, any other action movie Mark Wahlberg has been in. It just feels very generic, very by the numbers. The effects don't look particularly good. There's some pretty bad blue green screen going on in one sequence that they highlight with the plane. I just, and also it does seem to be very much like a mishmash of a lot of different elements of multiple games. It doesn't seem like they're adapting any particular one, which is fine. I don't think they needed to. But it just seems like it just doesn't seem as if there's any real story to this or real narrative that you can like kind of latch onto. It's just, hey, look at these. It's look at these old treasures. Oh, look at this old map. We can go here, and let's go get this. And that's it. It's caves and it's gold.
Globe-trotting treasure hunting.
And it just is so uninspired and bland. I don't know if you felt the same way or not, but.
Well, I was gonna say, going back to the performances, like I feel like Tom Holland is like dangerously close to falling victim to like Daniel Radcliffe disease, where like you can't see it. He's like so iconic as Spider-Man, just like Daniel Radcliffe was as Harry Potter, that it's like you can't really see him until he like grows up significantly. Like you can't really see him as anything other than Peter Parker.
Right.
Like
keep in mind he's 25. He's my age, so I don't know.
Right, but like Daniel Radcliffe looks now significantly different than he did as Harry Potter. Is like what I was saying.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah.
But like Tom Holland still looks like he's like 18.
Yes.
But same sentiment about Mark Wahlberg. Of this just like looks like you put Mark Wahlberg in this movie. He's not like turning into Sully or anything. So I'm with you as far as like the characters and performances go. I will say one thing that it seems like it has going for it, that big in the middle of the trailer, like the big climax of it is this airplane sequence in which like cargo falls out of the plane, and so does Nate, and he's kind of climbing his way back up. That looked very like, it looked like it was something straight out of the video game, as far as like, because that's something that you're like so used to in these games, is like leaping from edge to edge and pulling yourself up and like completely bonkers things like that. So like, as it may not have looked great as far as like technical aspects, and you said like the green screen and stuff, but like it looked accurate to what we should expect to see from an Uncharted movie. So that seemed to be working well.
That's,
if we had to point out,
I'll give you that as you stated it. But one thing you reminded me of it as you mentioned and kind of described that the games are very much kind of, they're not supposed to be realistic necessarily. Like they are kind of fantastical, and Nate does and survives things that you probably wouldn't in real life, of course. And I feel like for the movie, they needed to like tone it down a little bit potentially. I'm still fine with them doing a plane sequence like that as it is in the game, but I think you have to make it just a little more like believable. You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't have any weight to it. Like it feels very fake to me and looks fake. And like he literally does like a full-on Spider-Man jump back into the plane. Like he like against the wind. I mean, they're in the air.
Right. Which is like real world, no shot. Uncharted game 100% happens every time.
Yes.
Like, so it just depends on how they're like it doesn't look like they were trying to make this seem as if it was something that is realistic, but instead that it is
not
like
at all.
the game coming to the screen. So
but for me, I felt like it would have been,
it should have been
to at least make
realistic.
It like all you have to do is like close the gap a little bit, like make it a little bit more believable to like make that jump. I mean, we see Ethan Hunt in the Mission Impossible series do stuff like that all the time, so I can buy
right. But this is like, I'm totally with you. I have got the freeze frame pulled up right now, and my guy is a solid like 12 feet maybe. this jump, solid 12 feet, like you said, against the wind. And the momentum of that cargo is going backwards.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know what the physics of this universe are, but I will say one last thing here is that Tati Gabriel, I didn't know who she was. I didn't even know she was in this. But she was just in season 3 of You, and she was very good.
Okay.
So she seems to be like a villain, or like at least some sort of like lead henchman maybe of tracking down Nate and Sully. So if she was good in You, I'm interested to see more from her. So this seems to be like her first real, I mean, the Emoji Movie, obviously cinematic masterpiece, but other than that, first real big blockbuster appearance. So happy for her. Hopefully she's good. But other than Uncharted, we got another high quality action adventure movie here. First, I guess, final trailer for Red Notice. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Ryan Reynolds, Gal Gadot, another globe-trotting, treasure hunting spy movie. More or less excited for this than Uncharted?
Well, full disclosure, I did not watch a trailer for this. Because I think I watched, there was already some footage out, I think, that we saw at the Netflix event.
Right. We've seen, there's been a trailer previously for this.
Okay. So I saw that one. And I was not interested or excited by the premise of this movie when they said they were making it. The previous trailer kind of confirmed all of my issues. And I have literally no interest in watching this movie. So by that virtue, I did not watch the trailer for this.
So does that mean you're more excited for Uncharted?
I love the games. Like, I love it. If I had to watch one of these, I would watch Uncharted because at least I can have a reference point.
Gotcha.
And I can say, oh, I think this is good based on this, or I think this is bad based on this. For Red Notice, I just think I know it's going to be just whatever.
Yeah, I mean, this looks like I'm a Rock fan. I'm kind of over the Ryan Reynolds shtick at this point. Could go either way on Gal, but
right.
I mean, this looks like it's supposedly the biggest Netflix movie of all time, which will, by the time this comes out, it'll almost be replaced by The Gray Man. But at the time when they were making it, it was the biggest one. It seems something like in line with, Extraction that they had done previously. It seems like a typical like action thriller that is going to be a Netflix watch at home. I know they're doing a theatrical release for it. But I mean, I'll watch it. I'll probably like have a fun popcorn time watching it, but I mean, I don't expect it to be anything necessarily great. I will say, I just said I was over the Ryan Reynolds shtick, and I was thinking that going into this trailer, and then at the very beginning, he's like an art thief in this. I don't know how extensively you know this plot, but they like raid his place, and they're like, "You're wanted for stealing the painting of the woman with the red hat," or something like that. And they're like, "You don't have proof of that." And then he turns and looks at the wall, and the painting's over there. And Ryan Reynolds is like, "I got that on Etsy." And I like actually like caught myself laughing at that. And I was like, well, I guess I can't say that I'm over the shtick if I'm laughing at his first line in this trailer. So maybe there will be some good comedic moments here.
Fair play.
We'll see. Final trailer, most exciting, honestly. These all three came out on the same day. Wasn't expecting this one at all, I would say. Was the trailer for Ambulance, which is starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. Very like, I didn't really know much about this movie at all. Did you beforehand? We knew we were getting a new Michael Bay movie, but I didn't know any like plot details or really even when to anticipate this.
Yeah, I knew the basic premise of it and the cast,
but
of course.
Right. Well, anyway, this came out. We've got Jake Gyllenhaal kind of going unhinged in this movie as him and his wholesome, what is it, brother? Are they brothers or brother-in-laws?
Oh fuck!
But anyway, they are. One of them is an upright citizen. Jake Gyllenhaal is not, and he recruits Yahya to come and help him rob a bank, and things get really out of hand, and they're basically in an ambulance, on the run,
Yeah, they hijack an ambulance.
They hijack an ambulance, and
they cop in it.
they're holding an injured cop hostage and a nurse hostage, and then being chased by law enforcement. So
yeah,
this looked exciting. It looks fun. Of the three that we're talking about, this is the one I'm most excited for, I would say, which is interesting since I didn't even know it was a thing prior to this trailer coming out. But I'm really just interested in seeing. This looks like an unhinged Jake Gyllenhaal performance, and I'm a big fan of Jake in general. So I'm ready. I'm ready for this. There's one sequence where he's just like, it's early in the trailer, and the police officer comes up to try and they think they're about to get caught while they're robbing the bank, but they just have a little banter back and forth, and it's very, very good, very unhinged. So I'm here for it. I'm excited, and that's coming out February 18th. Did you check out this trailer or have any thoughts or anticipation here?
No, I did watch the trailer. I also saw it in IMAX when I went to see Dune on Thursday night. So I got the full feel for it. It just looks, it's Michael Bay, of course. So there's the typical.
I mean, I'm not expecting a masterpiece. So let me clarify there.
I understand that. Just visually and, the writing wise and everything. And Jake, I love him. I think he's very talented, of course. I loved him a lot more when he was working with, someone like Denis Villeneuve. I feel like in recent years, he's been like more hit or miss and kind of like all over the place. This reminds me it gives me David Ayer vibes, quite frankly. It reminds me of like End of Watch, for example. And it's kind of like a Heat meets Speed sort of scenario here. Where you have the cops like pursuing this vehicle and there's these bank robbers and there's this kind of behind the scenes drama going on. It just looks fine. I'm not like excited for it. I don't know if I'll see it or not. If it got like amazing reviews, I'm sure I would go check it out, but I feel pretty indifferent about it overall.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm not like I'm excited of the three to see it. I'm not gonna go opening. I'm not reserving my tickets in advance, but I'm more excited for this than I am for Uncharted or Red Notice. But those were the three trailers from last week. Now we've got a couple pieces of casting news, which I would say all three of these are considerably more exciting than the three trailers that we just talked about. First up, one that hits home for your boy here. Hayden Christensen will reprise his role as Anakin Skywalker in the upcoming Disney Plus Ahsoka series. So we already knew he was coming back for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, which makes sense because that's obviously set in between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. So he is still alive. Question here, Ahsoka series is set in the same timeline as Mandalorian. Darth Vader is dead at this point. So going to be relying heavily on flashbacks, maybe on Force ghost visions of Darth Vader or Anakin Skywalker. Obviously, Ahsoka was Anakin's apprentice throughout the Clone Wars series. They've got a great relationship, great chemistry there. Rosario Dawson playing the live action Ahsoka. Does this mean anything to you beyond just the fact that we're getting more of Revenge of the Sith, Hayden Christensen?
No, I mean, I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan. I think everyone knows that at this point. I like Hayden Christensen. I don't have particular fondness for his performance in those movies or the prequels in general, but I'm glad to see that he's getting support again, and people, he's kind of getting a resurgence. People seem to like him now, and they are appreciating him more, which is always nice to see. And he gets to cut some more Disney checks, and that's great too. I hope the Ahsoka show is good. I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't be. I like Mandalorian a lot, and I'm looking forward to his role in the Obi-Wan series as well. So, yeah, I'm down for it.
Good. I'm glad you're coming around finally. But yeah, I mean, we've gotten, like you said, the resurgence. His voice at least was in The Rise of Skywalker. Then his voice was used a bit in some of the Clone Wars stuff. And obviously, like I said, coming back for Obi-Wan, coming back for this. So who knows? We might be getting more and more Hayden Christensen as they kind of explore everything Star Wars on their mini shows coming soon. Next up, Emily Blunt in talks to star alongside Cillian Murphy in Christopher Nolan's upcoming Oppenheimer film. This big news here. I mean, that's going to be my first thought here was that it's reuniting the A Quiet Place 2 stars, which they were great together in that. Would likely be even better, honestly, in a Christopher Nolan movie like this. What are your thoughts on casting Emily Blunt as a potential dead wife, dead girlfriend, whatever the relationship is?
Well, I do think she's going to be alive for this. We were talking
That's
about
good. That's good.
Because he does have that girlfriend that dies, but it says that this is his wife, and I think that's after the fact. So, a living, breathing woman, 2 in a row for Nolan, pretty good. But I'm fine. I'm digging this. I mean, Emily Blunt is talented, and I'm certainly not as exciting as Cillian Murphy getting a lead role in a movie of this sort, but I think she'll be a good compliment to Cillian Murphy. And yeah, I'm down for that. I think she's a pretty good big name, and she has the chops. So as far as marketability, I think that helps the movie. And then also with regards to, potential, awards kind of stuff that, I always talk about and kind of focus in on, I could see potential there as well. So dope. And I'm looking forward to how the rest of this cast fills out as well. Fingers crossed, maybe we get a Tom Hardy in there or maybe a Christian Bale or something like that.
Well, Michael Caine retired from acting and then said he's not retired from acting. So obviously he's going to be in Christopher Nolan's upcoming film. So you go ahead and write that one in. Yeah. But other than that, we'll have to see what happens.
Fair play.
Last piece of casting news, Ryan Gosling. He's in talks to play Ken opposite Margot Robbie's Barbie in Warner Brothers film coming from director Greta Gerwig. For me personally, I mean, I'm already a bigger Margot Robbie fan than you are, Johnny, but instantly more interested. I know we're both big fans of the Goss God, and my hot couple alert radar is just going off the charts right now. I know this is a random story, funny story. We did I think it was back when Jake was still on as co-host, but we ranked the hottest movie couples, and I wrote up this, as we did that, I wrote up a piece on the website as well. And that's one of these pieces that consistently, we'll have new reviews and new articles and stuff that come out. And then on the stats on WordPress, it's for some reason, it's still 4th place. It keeps coming, people keep searching for who is the hottest movie couple. So we'll have to maybe pull that. People want to know. So we'll have to, if this comes through, we'll have to update that article and give them the crown before this movie even comes out. I mean, I don't want to get too horny on the podcast, but any thoughts here, Johnny, from you?
I think this is the best casting of the whole week of the 3 that we're talking about here. I was not really looking forward to this movie. I mean, I like Greta Gerwig, I like Margot Robbie, but wasn't really sure what to make of this. I knew she was writing with Noah Baumbach, so I think they could have a fun, maybe kind of meta take on it, or a modernized take on this material that could be really fun and interesting. But Ryan Gosling, maybe my favorite actor working right now. I have been waiting for him to come back. He hasn't been in a movie since First Man in 2018. He has a huge year coming up next year and in the coming years in general, because he is attached to so many big projects and is really choosing them really well, choosing great directors, choosing interesting screenplays. So this is another one on the docket for him, and his schedule seems like it's cleared up. They might be filming this early next year, and so that's coming, right around the corner. Really excited. I think they're going to make a great pair, aesthetically, and also with the chemistry. I think could really be there, and they could have a lot of fun in these 2 roles. However Baumbach and Gerwig have written them. I just think there's a lot of interesting dynamics there creatively, and the talent involved is really impressive.
I am with you there. But you know what was even more impressive, Johnny?
Let's hear it.
Tell me. No, you tell me. What was more impressive?
Does it rhyme with rune?
It's soon.
It's Dune?
Let's talk Dune. Let's do it.
It's Dune time, baby. All right. The spice is flowing. Look, there's not a whole lot to say at this point. We all know this is one of the most anticipated films of years now.
I dare say in podcast history.
In podcast history, quite potentially. And it's Denis Villeneuve. He's been quite possibly the best director of the last 10 years. This is his baby. This is kind of his magnum opus, potentially. It's something he's been wanting to make since he was a child. And now finally it is here. It's time. There has been a delay due to the pandemic. And there was another delay after that by a few weeks. It's hit the festival circuit. It's been released in Europe. It's released in parts of Asia. It's finally stateside and everywhere else available in theaters, and then now on HBO Max in domestically as well. Whew, man, I don't know. I have never had a movie I've been more excited for than this. Um, obviously, I read the book, strictly because Villeneuve was making it, and I knew it was science fiction. I knew it was a renowned novel and very, foundational for the genre. I'm a huge sci-fi fan as well as a Villeneuve fan. And then really once he loaded out the cast the way he did, it just, I mean, it's cherries and on cherries on cherries on top of this thing. Of course, Timothy Chalamet as Paul Atreides, Rebecca Ferguson as his mother, Lady Jessica, Oscar Isaac as his father, Leto Atreides. Then you have Josh Brolin, Stellan Skarsgård, Jason Momoa, Zendaya, Charlotte Rampling, Dave Bautista, Javier Bardem, Sharon Duncan Brewster, and David Desmalchian. Of course, there are others. Cast and crew goes crazy. Oscar winners, Oscar nominees everywhere. It's a dream team of sorts. Wouldn't you say, Zach?
100%. I mean, you just got a mouthful reading off the cast there, and even adding people that I didn't have on the list, because when we do this, like I usually, as we're making the Google Doc, I like copy and paste from Rotten Tomatoes, like who the top billed cast is, and it's usually like one or two people that we shout out. This one, I had to like go 10 people deep because it's just so incredibly well casted, like well cast for the roles, but also just in like A-list talent. Like everybody wanted to be a part of this movie, and you could tell in their performances and how committed they were and how fully invested they were in each role. And we're not even getting into like what's so good about this movie yet. So I'm 100% with you there when you talk about A-list talent. And then of course, shout out to friend of the podcast, Donnie Moe, absolutely crushing it, Donald Moat, with the hair and makeup here.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. I interviewed him last summer, and not this summer, a few months ago. I mean, summer 2020, in the middle of the pandemic. I was lucky and fortunate enough to have a great long conversation with him, and we got video of that up on our YouTube channel. I have a written interview as well on the website. If anyone wants to go check that out. We couldn't talk a lot about Dune at the time, but I love his work. I have loved it long before this. His work with Villeneuve and his work with others. And I think he's really going to get his due with this one. I see him getting a lot of attention, Oscars and otherwise, nominations and potentially wins. Really exciting for him and just everyone involved. I think there's just so much potential here in so many different ways. And we see that the potential has been realized in most every respect, I think. With critics, I think it's been doing really well. We know on Rotten Tomatoes right now, 83% critic score. Audiences, I don't know how many people would have made this bet, are liking it even more so. 91% audience score. That's the highest of any Villeneuve film to date. Zach, what did you end up scoring this thing?
I went into this movie. Anyone who knows either of us, who's listened to the podcast, who's seen us on Twitter, they know that I was excited for this, but I was nowhere near as excited for this as Johnny. Like it was my most anticipated of the year. I wanted to love it. I still had a little bit of like, just like, okay, what if I go into this and it's not as great? Like, I'm going to try and like keep like reserve myself and not just like put too much pressure on it to be perfect. Cause I don't know, but I go into this movie fully immersed in it. Like 2.5 hours go by, felt like 25 minutes. I came out, I was like, this is an immediate 5 stars. And I love Denny. I love Arrival, Enemy, Prisoners, Sicario, Blade. Honestly, like, and this is a sin to you, but like of those, like I would put, I liked Blade Runner 2049 as well, but like I didn't love it as much as I've loved the other ones. So if anything, I was like, if I didn't love Blade Runner 2049, that's obviously the closest that he's done to Dune. So like that was the one thing that was like holding me back from being like, Denny, I'm ready, baby. But 5 stars immediately straight out of the theater. 96 out of 100 for me. This was a near perfect movie with just a very slight, like literally the only thing that could have made this better was like 1 or 2 lines, not even scenes, but just like lines in the sound mix where like I couldn't quite make out what they were saying. And I was at Marbles in Raleigh, so I had the giant IMAX screen, the great sound. So like it's not like I was at home watching this on HBO Max with like TV speakers. So it's as close to perfect as it could be. So that's 96 out of 100 for me. Johnny, let me flip it on you. I know coming out of the theater, you were so just overwhelmed by everything.
Yes.
You didn't know what to give it. What have you settled on after three viewings in the theater, a viewing at home? You've written about it, you've talked about it. What's the verdict here?
Yeah, it's absolutely it's gone up. I mean, I came out of the first viewing, again, you said overwhelmed, definitely a good way to describe it, but settling down, analyzing it some more, revisiting, kind of piecing things together, I have grown to appreciate it even more than I did on the first time, and I loved it the first time. So yeah, I'm absolutely up there as well. I would say like 95 out of 100. This is right up there with the best that Villeneuve has delivered, 2049 and Arrival. I'm not sure how I would situate it among those other two yet. But I mean, that trinity of sci-fi accomplishments is something unlike really anyone else has done ever. So, that I think whichever one you would pick out of those, I would not argue or be mad about it. The movie itself, of course, we know the plot. We have Paul Atreides, a brilliant and gifted young man born into a great destiny beyond his understanding, must travel to the most dangerous planet in the universe to ensure the future of his family and his people. As malevolent forces explode into conflict over the planet's exclusive supply of the most precious resource in existence, only those who can conquer their own fear will survive. So it's a tale. Tale as old as time in some regards. Frank Herbert wrote this, came out in 1965. As I mentioned, has influenced plenty of movies, plenty of books, the genre as a whole. It's influenced Game of Thrones, it's influenced Star Wars, it's influenced The Matrix, a whole number of things. So it has things that are familiar to a lot of people, but I think it does quite enough differently, or does quite enough better than you might have ever seen it done elsewhere, to make an impact and to keep your interest and to keep you intrigued and really leave you wanting to see more and to want to see the rest of the story. Because of course, this isn't the whole story. It's Dune Part 1, as the opening title card lets everyone know. This, I was very pleased when we got done with the movie, because when I came out, as I said, overwhelmed, I was really struggling to process everything I saw and heard and how it, was differentiated from the book and my, my expectations and things like that. And I knew you were excited for it, but I knew you were, of course, less excited for it than I was. You read the book after I did, so you have probably a little bit fresher in your mind. But
still, at this point, I was reading the book in anticipation for release in winter of 2020. So it's still been over a year since I finished the book. So
yeah, absolutely. So that is, when we talked about it and I got your first reaction, because I was just like, what did you think? Because you didn't really say anything. You're just like, I can't even remember what you said, but it wasn't clear.
I texted you and I was like, bro, or like, dude, or something like that.
Yeah. And you were just like over the moon, like so stoked about it. And so I was like, oh God, like, thank God. Because of course we would have been having this conversation no matter what, but I was glad that you loved it, like pretty much just as much as I did, if not more so. And we're just as impressed, and it totally, like, it seems like it almost exceeded your expectations. So that was great. And then of course, just seeing everyone else's reactions over the weekend, I thought was just great. I mean, there were so many people coming out of it and praising it, and general reactions, and people had never read it or seen anything else. And I know people in my theaters were eating it up. The second time I saw it, people were like broke into applause at the end, and like that really never happens. And I know that's kind of like an American thing that happens. I just thought that was fun and kind of like added to it.
My theater was actually like at Cannes. There was a 17-minute standing ovation for it at Marbles after the credits rolled.
And so, yeah, it was just great all around. Like it's more than a movie. Like it really is an experience. Not just, of course, this in the theater, it's an experience, a sensory experience, but also over the last few days, it's been like this pop culture kind of experience that has been kind of hard to come by, during the pandemic. So that has been really exciting. We both read the book, which I think is great that we're on level playing field here. How did you feel it handled the story from beginning to end, truncating certain things, maybe expanding others, introducing new scenes or different elements? And then of course, also talking about how it ends, how it cuts off, where it leaves the audience at the end of part 1, before we get to part 2.
Yeah. I mean, what we've always heard, like obviously the discourse around Dune and the past attempts have been that it's just too much to adapt onto the screen. Like you have to have it in written form so that you can go into all of the minute details and and show different parts of the galaxy, different parts of the universe, and the characters' thoughts, and just like really dive into so much vocabulary, and like it's a lot. That was my biggest concern. Like, but the way that they go about it here, like I said, I'll name names. I was watching it on HBO Max with Rebecca, with my fiance, and we're watching it one night, and like I was worried because she's not like she enjoys watching movies, but she's not gonna like necessarily like something this like Dune is dense. Like as a text, Dune is dense. Like the movie improved it quite a bit. But like it's not just like a casual like I'm gonna turn it on and watch and then like not think about it. So things would happen, like discussions would happen, like the Reverend Mother comes and like that scene happens, and then I'm like in the like 10 seconds of silence between scenes, like I'm like, did you get that? Did you get that? And like I would like start to pause it, and she'd like recount it. Like she was like, this is not like me saying that Rebecca's dumb. Like she's incredibly smart. Like, but just to make sure, like I was aware of like how I was curious, because like as someone who had read the book, like I knew that I had that knowledge going into the movie. So I was wondering, like someone who has no familiarity whatsoever with the world, I was like worried that she wasn't going to be able to like process it all. And like she's literally like, yeah, I got it. Like this happened, that happened. Like this is what they're, and I'm like, okay, so it's not just like me as someone who has read the book, like understanding this. Like that truly like affirmed my confidence in like what Denny has done, what the movie as a whole has done to make this something that's so accessible to everyone, and that's like able, it's still a lot. It doesn't take away from what the story is or like the contents of it, but it just like does such a good job of packaging it in something that's not overwhelming. It's easily digestible, but it still has that same potency. So as far as like handling the story and everything, like the little details and just like the subject matter, it did that incredibly well. So I was absolutely thrilled to like see that for myself, to then get that reaffirmation from Rebecca as we watched it again. But talking about the ending, going to the cliffhanger there, I think that it ended at the perfect time. Like you've got your battle, you've got the attack on Arrakis, you've got like a big climax there, you've got a climax prior to that with the sandcrawler attack, or the worm attack at the spice harvester. You've got different sequences, the Thopter in the storm, you've got their escape from their captors, you've got the duel obviously at the end with Jameis that kind of acts as the final climax before setting the stage for part two. So I think that the pacing was so great throughout. You go through the highs and lows, you get the exposition and everything. There's a lot of exposition. It's clearly setting the stage for part two, where they're going to have more fun with it. But I don't think that this felt like it was just an exposition dump. It wasn't like something that we harp on. It wasn't Fantastic Beasts Part 2, where that was strictly setting the stage for Part 3. So this was a movie that can completely stand on its own. Obviously, at the end, you're going to want Part 2 and to continue on with the story. But like, I'm not leaving the theater here thinking like, oh, that was a waste, I didn't get the payoff. Like, no, it laid the groundwork, but did so in a way that was so compelling. So I know I kind of rambled on there. You might have multiple things you want to jump back to, but those are some thoughts from Zach.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's great. I think that's all promising and encouraging and spot on, because, you know, likewise, I've read the book, I'm very familiar with the lore, have explored it further. I've read the second book as well. And I thought that it did a great job of streamlining so many different elements. And I've seen so many people comment on this and in reviews and things like that on YouTube and on, you know, in different publications, just talking about how there's so much information and exposition to a degree, but it doesn't really feel like exposition necessarily. It doesn't feel like it's just sitting you down and telling you, okay, this is who this is, that's what that is. It feels more organic than I think maybe people expected or could have hoped for. And I think that, you know, we've seen plenty of other franchises, dense franchises, whether it's a genre film like sci-fi or otherwise, get bogged down in things like this. And it would have been very easy to do that here. But I think Villeneuve and John Spates, the co-writer of the screenplay, and of course, Eric Roth was involved as well. They found the right balance of telling you enough and then showing you most of it and letting you, not holding your hand so tightly through it all, just kind of letting you kind of bask in it and kind of let it wash over you. And it helps, it's a longer movie. It's, over 2.5 hours, but in that time, there was plenty to keep you engaged. And it wasn't all, we're talking about exposition and things like that. When I say, oh, well, it doesn't really, the shields, for example, one example that people have probably seen in the trailers or are in clips or something. The shields, you might, need to explain that or sit down and be like, okay, this is how this works, But in the movie, it's really just like, okay, they're practicing, they're sparring. Paul turns his shield on, and then we can see exactly what it does. Like, we know how it works. And that's the expectation for the rest of the movie. We don't
need... it's not like they sit down during that scene to, like, it's not like they have a discourse afterwards about how the shield works. It's like, as they're fighting, Gurney says, the quick blade deflects, but the slow blade, as he's like getting into his shield. So it's like they weave like it in so seamlessly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's great. And that happens, just throughout the movie in so many instances, I felt. And of course it helps, no matter what the dialogue might be, it certainly helps when you have great actors that can sell it and make it feel natural and make it seem like a normal conversation that would make sense in the context. Because a lot of times exposition comes off like, well, why are you saying that to this person? They know what you're saying. They already understand that. Why you're just saying that for the audience. But here it feels like, okay, it's part of the natural conversation. This person's just reiterating this thing to them, and they're arguing, or they're having a disagreement, or they need to elaborate on something. And so I thought that was great. And then, of course, talking about differences from the book, you mentioned there's plenty of action. There's plenty of, I didn't think there's any anticlimax, as you kind of mentioned. There's certainly a battle action heavy climax that does go down. But they expand on a lot of the action from the book, and they add action, as well. I thought that there was some stuff in here that, in the book, Frank Herbert doesn't go into a lot of detail about how certain battles go down or how certain action sequences take place. Here, you definitely get a good visual of everything that's going on, and who's doing what, who's losing, who's winning, and how that is happening. And it feels clean. It doesn't feel like it's too, of course, not too CG heavy or anything like that. Like, there's no weight to it. It all feels like there's substantial weight to it. Certainly helps when the VFX are really good when you're dealing with things like explosions or ships falling or blowing up and things like that. And of course, we've been talking about the story a lot. How did you feel about the characters? I listed all the people that are in the cast. How did you feel like they were translated to the screen? Did you notice any major differences, or what did you think the strongest characters were in this, or who'd you come away liking the most?
Yeah, obviously you've got Paul and Jessica front and center. One of the things that we talked about previously was the fact that non-book readers would maybe they were saying they were surprised at how prominent Jessica's role, Rebecca Ferguson, was in the movie. Not a surprise if you've read the book, because that she's there with Paul every step of the way on the journey. Right. But both of those were phenomenal. They had some incredible, all throughout the movie, they were great. I would say if there's any surprises, again, not for a book reader, but someone going in casually, going to see the Zendaya movie, they're screwed. She's obviously in the movie, and she's going to be huge in part 2. We know that's coming, but I think Denny did a good job with her of the book starts elsewhere. He starts with her on Arrakis narrating what's going on. And I think that was a token for the Zendaya stands that are helping this movie prevail. But it's trust me, I want to use her. She's coming. Just hold on. But of all of them, I think that Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho was the biggest surprise, the biggest enjoyment there. He's a guy, Game of Thrones, Aquaman, he's going to bring the energy. He's a fun guy to just watch interviews with, and a great presence. But in the book, Duncan Idaho and Paul's relationship is not super fraternal. I feel like they obviously have a relationship, but seeing these two on screen together, Jason and Timothy, bring it to life was fantastic. I think it's truly elevating from the book and making it even better on screen than it is in the novel. You've got like Paul like sprinting across the landing port, the spaceport, to go and welcome him back, him picking him up and spinning him around, like friendly banter between them, swapping stories. Like their relationship was one of the pleasant surprises here amongst everything that was so great. So I would say, though, obviously the main two there, no weak links, but the main two and Jason Momoa were my highlights.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much right alongside you there. You pretty much said it all, especially with regards to the expansion of Duncan's character. I thought they did a great job. Jason Momoa was pitch perfect casting, and pitch perfect not in a way that was maybe necessarily identical to what was on the page, but pitch perfect in adapting it, making it something a little bit different, maybe something a little bit even better or more than what is on the page. Having that connection, he's so likable. He's believable as a badass, as a warrior, and he is not playing. He's not exactly typecast here. I mean, he's a warrior, which we've seen him be plenty of times, but he's still a soldier. He's like a military man. He is.
You're right. I feel like he's usually like sort of like a wild card, reckless, like whether it's Khal Drogo or Aquaman. Like at least between Khal Drogo and Aquaman, that it's like kind of rebellious, not a rule follower, gonna go his own way. But like he's still like super respectful, very in line, but also still like that savage and brutal fighter.
Yes, and also he's always usually in charge or the one at the lead of everything. Here he's a subordinate to Oscar Isaac's character. Right. And of course, he's also really subordinate to Timothée Chalamet's character as well, Paul, because he is, he has to do what he says. I mean, he's serving the Atreides. And so that was great. And he does great in action scenes. He was a big asset to this movie, I felt. And Zendaya, of course, I'm looking forward to part 2, really to see a lot more of her, because she is mesmerizing when she's on screen. The little bit that she is, because she's in these visions, these dreamlike sequences, and they're visually stunning. And but she is a big part of those, and I understand why they marketed her so much. She's a big name, a big movie star. She seemed more than happy to lend her face and her time to the cause, and of course she's probably looking on that back end to have a big blockbuster to star in alongside Timothée Chalamet, who she's really close friends with now, which is awesome to see. So but yeah, Lady Jessica, Rebecca Ferguson, I've loved her since 2015 when Rogue Nation came out.
First MI appearance.
Yeah, I mean, she was just a knockout, crazy, awesome, badass in that movie, and she did it again in Fallout 3 years ago, and now she is really, she's doing something even more dramatic and nuanced.
And in she was great in Doctor Sleep as well.
Yes, great villain in that. So she's badass. She has it all. She can do the dramatic stuff. She can do the physical stuff. And she's very believable in the role. And again, adds, I think, even a little bit more dimension to the character, a little bit more warmth, maybe a little bit more humanity necessarily to the Bene Gesserit that she is playing in this movie. So, and then of course, Timothée Chalamet, perfect as Paul. There's really nothing else to say. I couldn't have imagined someone better for this. And I can't wait to see how he develops as a character in part 2 and hopefully a part 3, a Dune Messiah film.
Well, perfect segue there into what I wanted to talk about. The fact that going into this movie, the big thing was, we're getting part 1, part 2 is uncertain, part 3 is definitely uncertain, but great. I know you're the statistician over here with the box office numbers. I wrote a thing for the website. Dune part 1 is here. What's next? For people who were, the movie's called Dune. It's out there. The poster, the trailer, everything says Dune. They've gotten the marketing tagline of like, it begins. Chani says, this is only the beginning. So like they're insinuating that it's the start of something, but it's not. Like Dune part 1 is not out there. When you start the movie, it says Dune, it says part 1. So, if you're someone who's like not hip, not like super into this, you're going to the theater and you're like, wait a minute, did I know this is part 1? And then you get left with that cliffhanger ending after seeing this fantastic movie. Like I wrote that article for the people who are like, wait a minute, like, what is it? What's next? How do I figure it? Like, when is part 2 coming? What's going to happen
Right.
there? They laid the foundation here. Anyway, we know what comes in the second part of the book. We know that hopefully there will be the second book, which you have read, I have not, which would be the third film, crushing it at the box office, abroad and domestic. It should be a matter of time, right? Matter of time until they announce part 2.
Yes, that is. There's actually an article from Variety that just came out a few minutes ago, basically saying Warner Brothers is down to do it. They're happy with what the numbers are looking like, and they are HBO and box office and everything else. Denis, of course, wants to do it. Villeneuve is 100% in the position to come back. It's really just up to Legendary Pictures at this point, because they did finance 75% of the budget, and they have the rights to the franchise. So as soon as they say, okay, we're comfortable working with Warner Brothers again, we're comfortable working with Denis again, which I'm sure there's no issue on that front, then it'll be then that'll be when they can announce it and confirm it, and all the stress can dissipate, and we can just enjoy it and actually just watch it, and not feel like we are like crowdfunding this next blockbuster film. But it's an unprecedented situation. I have to say, like, I don't ever remember this happening. I've been following movies since I was a kid, so ideally it wouldn't be this way, but I am more than happy that audiences really around the world seem to be responding into it, from every degree of pretty well to very, very well and amazingly. So
if anything, I feel like it was strategic to say, oh, we need you to come and see this movie in theaters, so that we can make part 2, and like they're going to announce part 2 after the first weekend. Like, the people rose to the challenge just to help them get a couple extra bucks.
No doubt. I think that's certainly something that they had in the back of their mind, maybe at the front of their mind. But I really do feel, the one thing I was going to ask you was, now knowing what we know and seeing this movie, how do you think people are going to respond? This is the last thing I'll say or ask about it. How do you think people are going to feel about the sequel? How do you feel people are going to respond? I think personally that it'll be even more well-liked than this one, because of course it's not going to have the wide openness of the ending. I think that's honestly one of the biggest gripes that people have, is that it just does end, which I understand, but I didn't have any issues with it. Of course, I've read the book, so I know where it's going. But I think that'll be a huge asset. Also, there's going to be a lot more action, which I think, of course, is always a benefit for general audiences. And then also, of course, now you have an established fan base. So you have established audience. Right. Movie. They know the characters, they know the universe, they like it or they don't. And if they like it, then they want to see more, and they will go and support the next one. And of course, it's going to be theaters only, because going forward, Warner Brothers, that's how they're going to do it, 45-day theatrical windows. So that will maximize the box offices and could see, tens or potentially hundreds of $1 million more than what we're going to be getting with this one.
Right. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with all of those points, that you've got your established fan base that's going to show up. They're going to be excited for it. The people who are lukewarm on the first one are going to see the trailers for the next one and see that it is this action-packed epic. You don't have to do the heavy lifting of laying the groundwork of what the universe is, of building out characters. I mean, sure, there's still plenty to explore and new stuff to introduce in the sequel, but for the most part, you're going to be familiar. You're going to know what the Kwisatz Haderach is. You're going to know what Arrakis is or what the spice does, but you're not going to have to kind of like relearn all of that stuff. So instead, it's going to give Denis free range to just kind of play as much as he wants with this world and show like this big battle at the end, the sandworms, everything the Fremen people have, explore it further with the Harkonnens and the Emperor and the Guild. Like it's really, really exciting to hear that what you just said from that Variety article, and like know that it's all but a done deed. And I think people, like you said, will be super more exciting and open to that second movie.
Yeah, and that's last thing is also, once that's announced, I think that'll just invigorate people even more about this first movie. They're like, oh, so they are going to make a second one. Okay, I'll actually watch it now.
Right.
Now, if it's doing so well, they're making a second one. Oh, it must be pretty good. I'll go ahead and watch it. And also, once there's this matter of 2 or 3 years potentially between the movies,
more and more people will watch the first movie. They'll revisit the first movie, and they'll grow. Hopefully, they'll like it more. They'll like it if they're seeing it for the first time, and then that, of course, that'll accumulate to a part two.
And also, more people will, in that interim, maybe pick up the book and figure out where it's going and have a better appreciation of part one as well.
Exactly.
So, Dune, 5 stars all around, 96 out of 100 for me. Johnny, you said right around there, 95, 96, something like that. Go see it in theaters, biggest screen possible. If you can't, still watch it on HBO Max, better than not watching it at all. I'm so pleased with this movie.
Love it. It's here. It's over, I suppose, but the journey is just beginning, as they say.
That it is. And now we will journey to Film Fest 919. All right. So Johnny had to bounce, as we mentioned at the top of the episode. He was on call to go see a little film called Dune. So instead, it is just me as we break down Film Fest 919, which honestly works out because, like we said, I was in attendance for most of these movies. Johnny got to see Come On, Come On. We'll have to hear from him later. I'm sure we'll talk about that as the film is closing in on its upcoming release in theaters. But for me, I'm just going to quickly touch on all of these movies that I saw. I got to see 6 movies at the festival. So it was an absolute blast. And like I said, we will talk about these movies more in depth as their wide releases in theaters come closer. So I'm not going to dive into analyzing them on a super deep level, but instead I just want to talk about the festival as a whole because as we've talked about in the past, this is a great festival. It's held in Chapel Hill at Silver Spot Cinemas, and starting last year, they opened up the drive-in at Caraway Village, which is a nice outdoor venue as we're still in these COVID times. So the festival got started. First movie was on Tuesday night. Opening night, the film was King Richard at the drive-in. I was able to check that out. This is, of course, starring Will Smith as the father of Venus and Serena Williams. A lot of hype coming into this movie. Will Smith, he's been, talked about as if he's going to waltz through the Oscar season and win the Best Actor award at the Oscars. I gotta say that's looking sort of likely at this point after watching the movie. The hype is real. He delivers a great performance. It really allows him to flex everything that he has, going from being the biggest, most charismatic, almost like a LeVar Ball type personality at one moment, and then instead, when he's talking with his wife, with Brandy Williams, he's kind of broken down and insecure, and feels like he's inadequate, and that's why he's kind of got this big persona. So Will Smith really just goes back and forth seamlessly between those two. Great performance, but outside of his performance as a whole, the movie kind of hits your basic biopic sports drama notes, and it's nothing fancy. I mean, it's a great movie. I gave this 4 stars out of 5 and 83 out of 100. But, it's got your early training montages, getting to know the sport. It's got your setback in a sporting event in a big competition, something to hold them back. And then it's got the comeback story as you're getting to the final match, the big what have you, in whatever sport it is. That's typically the way that these things go. It gave me some similarities to Creed. Not necessarily anyone who this is based on the true story of Venus and Serena Williams, so it's not necessarily a spoiler if you know what happens to her. I won't spoil it for people who aren't as familiar. Myself, I knew of Venus and Serena Williams. Obviously, I have a brain. I've turned on ESPN once in my life, but I didn't know like the intricacies of their story. I didn't know, other than the fact that that Richard Williams was an overbearing father who kind of drove them to be who they are. I didn't know the details, so I was taken by surprise quite a bit. The movie really focuses on, again, I didn't know, but we all know Serena's the big one nowadays, but Venus was the one who went pro first, so the movie focuses really on Richard and Venus's relationship and her path to the pros. Like I said, it's familiar, but I didn't know all of the details, so it allowed you to kind of understand it and still have plenty of surprises there. It was a bit long, lots of tennis scenes here. Obviously it's a movie about tennis, but to a certain extent, once you have so many training montages, practices, different matches, they kind of lose their potency there. So could have cut a few, tightened it up a little bit. Also, John Bernthal, great. He plays Rick Macy, who's the coach, the tennis coach for Venus, and he delivers a great performance here. So again, 4 out of 5, 83 out of 100. Great experience at the drive-in theater at Caraway Village. For anybody local to the Triangle in Chapel Hill, I would recommend going over there. They had a great projection. You can either have it on your radio in your car, or they'll give you a radio. So I would suggest that if you're still unsafe going to movie theaters, that's a great alternative there. Moving on to the second day of the festival, this is when I saw Petite Maman. It's a French film from Céline Sciamma, who of course did Portrait of a Lady on Fire a couple years ago. That was actually at the Film Fest 919 back in 2019, and was a huge hit there. So I was super excited for this one. Again, you know, it was going in the opposite direction of what we saw with Portrait of a Lady on Fire. That was a long, deep romance between the two, a slow burn. This one clocks in at just about 70 minutes. It's really, really, really solid. This was my overall favorite of the entire festival. So I was a huge fan of this movie. It basically tells the story of a young girl who's 8 years old. Her grandmother passes away, and they're going to clean out her grandmother's house as they pack up and move on. And what ends up happening is she wanders into the woods to visit basically the treehouse that her mother had growing up. And she meets another 8-year-old out there. And it turns out that this 8-year-old, she's wandered into the past, and this 8-year-old is her mother as a child. So it's got a little bit of like sci-fi supernatural elements, but it's by no means a sci-fi movie. Like, this is something that it happens and you just accept that it happens and move on. Like, you're not learning about the why. That's not important. Instead, this is just the vessel to develop this relationship between young Nellie, the daughter, and her mother, Marion. So we've got the two of these children together. They're played by twin sisters, Josephine and Gabrielle Sanz. Some of the best child acting that I've seen. It's really, really impressive. It's so tender, so sweet between them. And, you know, this is really just an ultimate flex from Céline Sciamma because, like I said, this movie's an hour and 12 minutes, so 72 minutes. But she's so effective in the storytelling in a short amount of time that there are these sequences where it's a very quiet movie. So not much is, like, obviously there's dialogue, but not much is said. But a lot of it is told through actions, through reactions, just the way that you can tell these characters are interacting non-verbally. It was a good coming-of-age story, talked about a lot about loss and innocence, and I really loved the ending of this movie. You know, they kind of have like a one last adventure type thing. So it's just the climax of this movie is two little girls making pancakes and going to play in the river. It's not a high drama. It's not anything action packed, but it's just a very pure and wholesome movie that was super, super well made. So I was a big fan of this. 4.5 out of 5, a 92 out of 100. This has quickly jumped into my top 3 of the year here. Moving on to the next day, my third day at the festival. This was a double header for me. I was back at Silver Spot in the movie theater for this, and I was checking out a movie called Mass. This is one that Johnny has talked about on the podcast previously because it came out at Sundance earlier this year. And it is a super, super heavy drama. Directed by Fran Kranz, and it follows two families in the aftermath of a violent tragedy, a school shooting. These two families are coming together. It's a husband and wife on both sides. And on one side, you've got the parents of one of the children who was a victim. And then on the other side, you have the parents of the shooter. So obviously, lots of tension there between the two of them. It's really, really well made. I wasn't as crazy about this as some of the other movies that I saw, but I still gave this a 3 out of 5, a 65 out of 100. It does a really good job because, like I said, about those two parents, the two relationships, you don't know who's who off the bat. You don't know what they very beat around the bush when they're setting up the first like 10 to 15 minutes before everything gets rolling. And so you're kind of putting the pieces together as they're making their way to this room where 90% of the movie takes place with these four people around a circular table just letting it rip. And for a lot of this movie, it feels like there's just a lot of venting, and no closure. And I was going to use this against the movie, but that's kind of how real life is. And it seemed to be working well. But then at the end, there is closure. They do circle around, and there's just a powerhouse ending. And that's in large part due to the performances that we get here. Of the 4 characters that we spend most of the time with, 3 of them are phenomenal. Jason Isaacs, also known as Lucius Malfoy from Harry Potter, he is great. Martha Plimpton plays his wife Gail. Ann Dowd plays Linda, the mother of the shooter. These 3 have like fantastic moments that would be worthy of just any of them. If it was just that moment, they could all win Oscars for their acting, and that would be a perfect clip for them to show at the Oscars. But for me, this movie was inconsistent. It had highs and lows, a lot of the time, like I said, is spent in that room with them. And so there are these big, fantastic moments where they really bring it, and then it kind of like teeters for a bit and kind of gets a little stale, and then another powerhouse moment comes. So it was kind of just too inconsistent for me to be able to fully invest in this. And honestly, it's a powerful movie, but I was knowing what I was getting into. I was really hoping to be more moved by this. So 3 out of 5, 65 out of 100 for Mass. Then going in the most insane transition of all time for a doubleheader, from Mass to a movie called Red Rocket. I had maybe 15 minutes between the 2 showings, and let me tell you, they could not be more difficult or more different, excuse me. Mikey Saber is a washed-up porn star who returns to his small Texas hometown. Not that anyone really wants him back. That's the log line for Red Rocket. It's a dramedy from Sean Baker and Chris Bergosh, who have done previously they've done the Florida Project, they've done Tangerine. They're a great duo that has a lot of history together and have put out some really great movies. This is a sister film to the movie Starlet, which was one of their first together, but it's great. This was my second favorite of the festival. I gave this 4 out of 5, 84 out of 100. Absolute blast. You've got Simon Rex playing Mikey Saber, the porn star who's coming home to this little like middle of nowhere bumfuck Texas town, and he is so charismatic, so charming, and it almost makes you forget that he's like a despicable human, that he's out here like bumming off of his ex-wife and his girlfriend. He's selling weed to everyone in town. He's grooming this 17-year-old girl to come and join him in the porn industry and hooking up with her on the side while she has like a fling with someone, but then gets her to break it off. And he, mind you, he is not a young fella. I don't know if they say his age, but he is considerably older than her. And like I said, she is 17. Strawberry is the character's name. And I will say, she delivers a great performance. The actress who plays her, she was discovered. So Chris Bergosh, the writer of who wrote this with Sean Baker, he was at the film festival, and he was able we got to chat with him beforehand. He had a Q&A afterwards, and he was talking about how they found the actress who plays Strawberry. I'm pulling up her name right now. I apologize. But she was just at the ArcLight Cinema, and he found her. Sean Baker just approached her because she had the look that he was going for. And luckily she did movies. She was interested in doing this, and it worked out really, really well, because the chemistry between her, like, she's fantastic in her own. I know it's gross what Simon's character Mikey is doing to her, but Susanna San, that's her name, she crushes it, giving it right back to Mikey. So really, really standout performance here. I believe she's been nominated for a Gotham Award for Breakout Performer. Much deserved. Loved it. Great performance there. So if you want to compare this to something, it gives me Uncut Gems meets the Florida Project vibe. Obviously, Florida Project is one that these two have done before. It's a real slice of life. Like, you're just with these people in this community that you probably aren't super familiar with, and you're just kind of spending a day in their shoes, lots of days in this case. But it's also got this same like frenetic energy that Uncut Gems has, where it's so chaotic and the people are slimy and everything that's going on is just like very sketchy, but you are still super engaged and you can't look away. I really love the look of it all. It's a very beautiful film, and it succeeds in making you uncomfortable, even though you're still like rooting for them, but it's, you know that it's wrong. It gave me like that's one of the best things. We were just talking about Succession and how despicable the characters are there, but we still love them and are rooting for them and engaged in that story. So I think this is something that's really likably unlikable, and I was a big fan. So that is Red Rocket. Then moving forward, we had a little trip to Norway with The Worst Person in the World. This just got announced as the international feature nomination from Norway. This movie was told in 16 chapters, I believe. I believe it was a prologue, an epilogue, and 16 chapters. But it was a really cool way that they had broken this up. This movie played at Cannes, and it was a big hit there. And the star of Renate Riensvi, I'm butchering that, but she had a fantastic breakout performance and won the Breakout Performer Award there. But this movie is a rom-com, chronicles 4 years in the life of Julie, a young woman who navigates the troubled waters of her love life and struggles to find her career path, leading her to take a realistic look at who she really is. This movie's fun and light, but it's also super heavy and relatable. You know, myself, I'm not someone who's been in the same positions as her, where she's like super flaky. She's like jumping from career to career, person to person, really just wandering aimlessly through life as she's trying to figure out who she is. But still, this movie presents it in a way where it feels relatable even to people who haven't been in those situations. I really liked the chapters. I thought that she was excellent. You got good performances as well from Anders, who plays Axel, and then from Herbert Nordrum, who plays Ivan. So two great co-stars for her. And it had some good laughs. It had a few emotional moments. It meandered a little bit as it kind of like wove through the chapters, but that's sort of, it reflected the real life nature of this, because it was a movie that felt very real and honest. It was a little bit too long. Maybe trim a couple chapters, we're good to go. But I still really enjoyed it. 3 out of 5 stars for me. That was a good one, and I'm looking forward to that. It's picked up by Neon. It's going to be released at some point. It doesn't have a release date yet, but it will be at some point in the US. And that was 3 out of 5 stars, 79 out of 100 for me. Then finally, closing night of the festival, got back into the theater for Spencer. This is obviously the Princess Diana biopic from Pablo Larraín that's coming out very soon here, and it lived up to the hype. We, again, similar to King Richard off the top, where it was a movie that is getting Will Smith basically a lock for Best Actor, this is doing the same thing for Kristen Stewart as Best Actress, and I have to agree. She completely 100% disappears into this role, from the hair and the makeup to her mannerisms to her dialect. Like, she is Princess Diana. There was maybe 1 or 2 moments where I caught her at the right angle in the movie, and I was like, oh my God, you're right, that's Kristen Stewart. That's not that's not the real Princess Diana. But instead, she, for 99.9% of this, you can't tell. It took a little bit to get going as far as the movie itself, but once it hit its stride, it was just excellent. Once she's at the castle, she's with the family over this holiday week, these holiday 3 days, and she's just struggling. It perfectly encapsulates the feelings of isolation, the feeling of loneliness, the feeling of overbearing pressure that we have come to learn was affecting Princess Diana at these times. And it's magnificent. It looks beautiful. It sounds beautiful. The score by Johnny Greenwood is wonderful. It blends in, honestly, for a straight up biopic, it blends in some fantastical elements almost. Like, there's not necessarily hallucinations, but almost like thoughts. Like, it explores some like what if scenarios that Diana thinks about, And then it also works in some like storytelling that she's reading about that comes to life, which is a nice twist, mixes it up a little bit from just feeling like a straight up biopic. And like I said, it looks absolutely beautiful. I hope that there's some recognition and love here for cinematography. This was a 4 out of 5 for me, 82 out of 100. And that wraps up the 6 movies that I got to see at Film Fest 919. Quick refresher here. I'm going to run through them in the order that I ranked them after the festival. I do want to shout out that King Richard and Come On, Come On, which Johnny saw, starring Joaquin Phoenix. He'll talk about that later. King Richard and Come On, Come On tied for the audience favorite award. So a lot of people love those. Myself personally ranking number 1, Petite Maman, number 2, Red Rocket, number 3, King Richard, number 4, Spencer, number 5, The Worst Person in the World, and number 6, Mass. Again, Mass may be number 6. It was 65 out of 100, 3 stars. Nothing that I saw was bad. Everything ranged from great to absolutely fantastic. So there was not a single bad thing here, and that's been the case at Film Fest 919 for the last 4 years. We've gotten to cover it every year. I'm looking forward to year 5, and I can't thank the crew over there enough for giving us this chance and for putting on such a wonderful festival. So that's been your Film Fest 919 recap, and that's the end of this episode. Thank you all for listening. We really appreciate it week in and week out. Go ahead and give us a follow on Twitter, Instagram, like us on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube. We're closing in on 1,000 subscribers at YouTube. Be the one. You can find all of those at Inside Film Room. And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, wherever you get a podcast. We are there. And come back next week while we talk about Last Night in Soho. It's spooky season, baby. We'll see you then.